Parshas Bo, the first Aliyah. Let's see what we can learn from the first Aliyah. And Rabbi Soloveitchik pays close attention to wording in particular in this Aliyah. He sees tremendous insights in the choice of words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses. And this has implications, of course, as you'll see, for our Seder as well on Pesach. ויאמר השם אל משה בוא אל פרעה כי אני הכבדתי את ליבו ואסלב עבדיו למען שישי אל ששי אלה בקרבו. Hashem said to Moshe, come to Paro, Bo el Paro, for I have made his heart and the heart of his servants stubborn, so that I can put these signs of mine in his midst. ולמד תספר בו אזני בנך ובן בנך אשר יסללתי במצרים וסוסייבס אשר שמתי בם וידעתם כי אני השם. And so that you may relate in the ears of your son and your son's son, your grandchildren, that I made a mockery of Egypt and my sons and I made a mockery of Egypt and my signs that I placed among them, that you may know that I am Hashem. Vayavo Moshe ve'Aaron el Paro, and Moshe and Aaron come to Paro, vayamu elav, and they say to him, Ko amar Hashem, Elokei Rivim ad Mosai mi'anta lo nos mi panai shalach hami v'avduni. And they challenge Paro, right? And they say, until when will you refuse to be humbled before HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Send out my people that they may serve me. Because if you don't, I'm going to send locust. It's going to be so great that it's going to cover the land. You won't be able to see the land. That's how much locust is going to be. And they're going to eat all that was remaining over from barad, from hail, whatever didn't. It's going to be so devastating that they're going to even eat that which the barad left over, which wasn't very good, right? And they're going to consume all the trees that grow in your field. And they warn them, it's going to fill the houses in your houses and your servants' houses, all the houses in Mitzrayim. And you've never seen anything like this. This locust is going to be so devastating and so massive, and you won't see again ad hayom hazeh. You haven't seen it, and you're not going to see miyom hayosam alatam ad hayom hazeh. Vayivim vayetze mi Paro, and they walk out. They leave Paro. Vayamru avdei Paro elav ad masai yezel lo nuloke shalachas hanashim v'yavdu es Hashem Elohim aterem teda ki avdam Mitzrayim. And now suddenly Paro's servants challenge Paro, right? Suddenly everything changes. How long will this be a snare for us? Send out these men, get them out, let them go, let them serve God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is lost? We're going to lose everything we have. Get them out of here. Vayishav Moshe es Aharon el Paro vayomar aleim lechu ivdu es Hashem Elokechem mi v'mi ha'olchim. And so Moshe and Aaron were returned because the servants challenged, right? The servants are challenging Paro. And so Paro says, okay, bring them back. So they go and they get Moshe. And he says, okay, go, serve your God. But tell me, mi v'mi ha'olchim, who's going? Vayomer Moshe, you want to know? So Moshe answers, Binu urenu, our children, uvesikenu, and our elders, nelech, they're going to go together. Bivanenu uvnosenu, our sons and our daughters. Bitzonenu uvkarenu, and our animals are going to go. Nelech, ki chag Hashem lanu. Everything is going to go. Our elders, our children, everybody's going to go. Vayomer aleihem, yechin Hashem imachem kasher shalach eschem v'tztapchem re'u ki ra'a neged pneichem. Now Paro gives an answer. He says to them, so be Hashem with you, as I will send you forth with your children. Look, the evil intent is opposite your face. You're going to do this? He says, open your eyes. Ki ra'a neged, this is your plan? Boy, are you going to get punished. Evil is going to follow you. That's Paro's answer to Moshe and Aaron. And he says, this is your plan to take the children. Everything's going to be bad, evil to you. It's not going to go. Fine, go with the men. In other words, Paro puts a halt on this idea that you're going to take children with you. No, this is evil that's going to open your eyes, Moshe. Don't you realize you're going to create evil here? Okay, that's what those are the psukim. Now the Rav analyzes the psukim very carefully and says, like I said before, he notes wording that is pregnant with information. At the very beginning, the word that gives the parsha its name, Bo El Paro, Bo El Paro, come. What when does this come? Rav wonders, why would the Torah use the word bo? It should have used which word? Lech. And we know Lech is so well known in the Torah. Lech lecha, right? The famous command to Avram on his great journey that created our people. Why shouldn't it have said Lech? Lech el paro, which is the famous language of the Torah. The Rav explained, bo implies that the mission is different than just a regular shlichut, a regular sending an agent. The Rav notes that actually this is a very formal legal terminology that the Rav uses, and we're going to break it down in 2 seconds. But the Rav says there are 2 types of agencies. There are 2 types of shlichut. There's a shliach that he calls an agent, a proxy that he calls formal juridic agent. Formal-juridic agent. I told you it's going to be very formal wording. The Rav is going to use heavy-duty wording. Formal juridic agent. That's agent 1. Then there is agency number 2. It's called by the Rav personalistic and experiential agent. A personalistic experiential agent. Wow, these are mouthfuls, right? Yeah. So experiential agent. What in the world do these 2 terms mean? And once you understand them, you see that it's just brilliant. First and foremost, we need to understand there's a major difference between what type of agent you become. The formal juridic agent is the one who acts as a proxy for someone else. You become shaliach odom kamoso. The mishaleach, the one who sends you, is not present when you go and do your agency. You send the person as your proxy. He's standing in for you because you're not there, right? Why don't, if I send somebody to do something for me and I say, go to X, Y, and Z place because I can't be there, and I'm asking you to be my agent there, that's what we call a formal juridic agent. You are the one who replaces me. In other words, in such a situation, whatever the agent does becomes valid. It is valid. It's endowed with his power to represent the Mishaleach. I've sent you. I can't be there. You're representing me. Whatever you do on my behalf is going to be valid. An example of this type, can you give me from Tanakh? Of course. Avram and Eliezer. Eliezer. What?
A power of attorney.
It's a power of attorney. You're not there. That's correct. That's the formal juridic agent, but it's even more, a power of attorney can be just on a document, but yes, a power of attorney here as a mishaleach sending a shaliach, and the shaliach becomes his proxy because you are not there, and the agent becomes your representative, and everything the agent does is valid. Avram and Eliezer is the prime example. Avram was not able to personally go to Haran to find a wife for his son Yitzchak. He sends Eliezer, and whatever Eliezer is going, he makes Eliezer swear. We remember the story, but whatever Eliezer is going to do is going to be valid. Why? Because he represents Avram. He's there instead of Avram. That's type 1 agency. But then there's a different type of shlichut. It's totally different. This is a relationship of 2 people united by a bond of friendship. The 2 are committed to the same destiny. They share each other's joys and travails. They work for the same cause and they confide in each other. Each acts in certain areas on behalf of the other, even though both are right there together. They're not separate. It's Avram and Eliezer going together, if you will. In other words, they act on the other's behalf with the other being present. The best example of this personalistic experiential agency is that of a Navi. A Navi becomes a Shaliach Hashem, but Hashem is with him at all times. The Almighty is there. He's present. Not only the Rav describes it as if the Navi feels the presence of Hashem. That's Nevuah. He feels the breath, if you will, of Hashem breathing on him. And if you want to give it in wording, it is this type of shlichut that Moshe was receiving from Hashem. He wasn't a lech lecho. It wasn't. It was a bo el paro. Bo el paro means bo is a command as an imperative. God is letting Moshe know that he will be with him as one unit. Moshe's thoughts are Hashem's thoughts, and they are identical, and they go together, if you will. When Moshe speaks, who's speaking with him? Hashem. Bo el paro was implying that God will walk together with Moshe. Moshe is not going to be left alone for a moment. They will walk together arm in arm. They will be so united that they will have one voice, one feeling, one experience. That's why the Rav calls it experiential. It's the same. You feel the mishaleach as you're the shaliach, you're the agent, you're the proxy, but the mishaleach is right with you. What God was telling Moshe is that finitude would embrace infinity. We're finitude. We're finite. Hashem is infinite. And in this case, it was going to be infinity meeting, right? Exactly. Finitude meeting and embracing infinity. And it will work perfectly. That's bo el paro. You're not going alone. So simple language, Hashem is saying to him, you're going to be my agent, but I am going to be with you. I'm going to walk with you arm in arm. That's why it doesn't say lech el paro. And that's how it's interpreting. That's how it's addressing Moshe. Moshe, understand, now it's going to be a bo el paro. I want you, of course, this is towards the end of the makot. Remember, how many makot still exist? 3. Well, everybody knows that bo is the gematria of 3. That's the easy way to remember. There's 7 in Va'era, and there's 3 in Parshas Bo. Bo el paro, you're coming towards the end, and Moshe, no, I am going to be there with you on holding your hand. We're going to walk with, as I said, finitude is going to embrace infinity. Okay, continue next pasuk. Ulaman tisa, that one word is so important for the Rav, but now the next word is very important. Ulaman tisaper ba'aznei bincha uven bincha. And this story you're going to tell to your children and your grandchildren. There's going to be a time, right? We know there's a command. V'yigadet levincha bayom hahu lemor. Okay, you're going to tell this story all over again. The word tisaper, samach pei reish, saper, the Rav says, has 2 meanings. It alludes to 2 root words. Sipur, right? To recount, saper, to recount. An oral transmission. And what else? No, that's saper. That's counting. That's counting. That's counting. That's oral. Or sofer. Right. That's correct. It's a scribe. The story can be transmitted either orally or written, and there are 2 different modes of expression. The power of a sefer, laman tisaper ba'aznei bincha. The role of the sefer, the Rav notes, we can see in Megillat Esther. Megillat Esther is given 2 names. Megillat Esther is called an igeret, a letter. It's called also a sefer. A sefer, it says at the end of Megillat Esther. What is the difference between an igeret and a sefer? An igeret is written with less precision, right, than a book. What happens with an igeret? After you read it, what do you do with it? You discard it. That's the purpose. You don't write an igeret with precision. People don't write letters with precision. But what about a book? It's written by a sofer. And how does he write it? And on what does he write it? He writes it on parchment. It's meant to be permanent. A sefer is intended to be imparted from generation to generation. The Rav notes that this idea is that we write, that we're able to share our ideas permanently on paper, on parchment, the Chazal understood as one of the greatest miracles that man is able to perform. In Pirkei Avot, in Parakeh, Mishnah Ches, it says the ability to write, if you will, right, became one of the miracles that was created on the sixth day, right bein hashmashos. God, we are told, created the ksav v'hamichtav, the ability to write. The ability to write. What's so magnificent about writing? What's the written word do? It offers us a window into the thinking of the author, doesn't it? It offers us the ability, when you read a book, you identify with the author. You identify with the writer, with the sofer. When we learn Chumash, the Rav noted, are we just learning what took place thousands of years ago? Not at all. We are identifying with the characters. They become living personalities, and we are, if you will, enter into their world. That is what happens with writing. We actually have the ability to be contemporaries with the protagonists. I'll give you an example. You read the story every year of Yosef and his brothers. How do you feel about it? You feel like, oh, I got to hear the end of this. And you know the end of it, because every time you jump in, if you will, as a contemporary of theirs, you're watching on the sidelines exactly what's happening. You feel you're right there. You want to know, how is it all going to end? I know the story very well. No, but when it's written, right, a good book allows you to know what the thinking of the protagonist is, and you feel like one of their contemporaries. And this is the very idea that happens on Seder night. It's called the miracle of Ksav v'hamichtav, the Sofer, Tisaper. Tisaper is not only an oral, the Rav points out. Yes, it's an oral transmission. We're sitting at our Seder and we're transmitting it orally. But in the words of the Rav, let me read this to you. It's beautiful. The foremost task of the parent, of the father, is to be a sofer, to transform his child into a book upon which he writes indelibly, a book that will survive him, that will be imparted to succeeding generations. The father becomes the sofer, the child becomes the sefer. And the child, if you will, the father writes on the child what the father wants the child to impart, not only to him, it's not only father to son, but it's father to generations to come. And then the Rav makes an unbelievable insight. He says the appellation people of the book, that's what we're called, Am HaSefer, correct? It does not, the Rav say, mean a nation that reads books. That's not what Am HaSefer means. It's a nation whose very being is a book. Hashem wrote upon us. He was the sofer, the ultimate sofer. And we're, right? He's the scribe, and we become the sefer. He gave us the ultimate sefer. It's called the Torah. He is the sofer, and we're the sefer. We become one in the same. What is so sad, the Rav notes, which is true, and he's writing this in the 70s, 60s and 70s. He's talking about that in only al-achat kama v'kama, even more so today. He says it is so sad that our modern generation, he writes, is that we believe that there's a generation gap between generations. He says, not at all. Judaism vis-a-vis the mitzvah of recounting Yetziat Mitzrayim as part and parcel of the most, it's the mitzvah that constantly repeats itself, doesn't it? It's found in Kiddush. It's found in everything we do is Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. We have demonstrated that Judaism, via recounting Mitzrayim, demonstrates that we don't subscribe to a notion of a generation gap. Not at all. We inscribe our religious consciousness from generation to generation. And that's what Leman Tisaper Ba'aznei Bincha. To understand, again, what the Rav is pointing out is, what do you mean Leman Tisaper? Yes, you will impart it orally from one generation to another. But there's much more to that one. Leman Tisaper, there's another level of command being instructed. Leman Tisaper, be a sofer. inscribe onto your child and to your grandchildren, right? I think that the most beautiful, I've said this a number of times, for me, everybody has their favorite pasuk in the Torah. My favorite pasuk is at the very end of Vayechi, page 288, Perek Nun, pasuk Chav Gimel. And when you realize, when you read this within the context of the story, you'll see here, Yosef has been the focus of Parshas Vayeshev. Parshas, right? Vayeshev, then Miketz, then Vayigash, then Vayechi. 4 parshiot. Nobody has so many parshiot devoted to him. Vayeshev, Miketz, Vayigash, Vayechi. Correct? And what has he become? The most powerful man in the whole world. I'm the second most powerful. He's right under the king, but you can even argue he was more powerful than the king, because he was the puppeteer. He was the puppeteer, and the king was the puppet, right? Okay. So take a look at this pasuk in Chav Gimel, Perek Nun, pasuk Chav Gimel on 288. The way you leave a story, the way a story ends, the way a story begins and the way a story ends is very important, right? Here, Yosef is leaving the face of history. So what does it say? Vayar Yosef le'Ephraim b'nei Shileshim, gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe yuldu al birkei Yosef. What happens here? Yosef saw 3 generations through Ephraim. Even the sons of Machir, the son of Menashe, was raised on Yosef's knees. What? He saw grandchildren, he saw great-grandchildren. The picture you have of Yosef leaving the face of history is what? A Zaidi with his grandchildren on his knees. To me, that is the most powerful pasuk in the entire Torah. Why? Because that's the father, the grandfather being the sofer, and the child becoming the sefer. The miracle, now you understand what did Chazal mean when it said, Haksav v'hamichtav was created in Pirkei Avos at twilight on the day of creation. It is one of the greatest miracles that we're able to be a sofer, an author, and our child can be the sefer. We're able to impart. We don't believe, God forbid, in a generation gap at all. We impart it one to another. Continue on. Now the Rav jumps to Pasuk Zayin. Vayamru avdei paro elav ad matai yeh zeh lanu l'mokeh shalach es anashim v'yavdu es Hashem Elohem haterem teda ki avda Mitzrayim. In these words, who spoke? Who spoke in this pasuk? What's avdei paro?
It's the house of Paro, the servants of
Avdei paro. So the Rav points out, read it very carefully. What you're going to see here is the distinction between the servants that were Egyptian and the servants that were Jewish. What are the Jewish servants called? Well, let's go to Devarim, Perek Vav, Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Go all the way to Devarim, Perek Vav, Pasuk Chaf Aleph, and you know this pasuk very well because it appears in your Haggadah. The Amarta Levincha Avodim Hayinu leParo b'Mitzrayim. Avodim Hayinu, right? We don't say Avdei Paro b'Mitzrayim. We were Avdei Paro. Avdei Paro is here. We're Avadim Hayinu leParo. And the Rav points out something profound. And the Rav notes this is also quoted in the Rav's Haggadah that they published. The Rav takes a very close reading of the text and offers us a crucial insight on how the Jew differed from the Egyptians and their relationship to Paro. In describing the Egyptians, this pasuk says Avdei Paro. Avdei Paro suggests, you want to know their identity? There it is. Avdei Paro, that's who they are. That's all they are. They're Avdei Paro. They perceive themselves as totally being slaves. Their allegiance is totally connected to Paro. Their existence is totally connected to being slaves to Paro. That's Avdei Paro. In contrast, we're called Avodim Hayinu leParo. We were slaves to Paro. Okay, we were slaves. Our freedom was taken away from us. And who did we work for? In this case, we worked for Paro, which indicates that the boss was Paro, but we never identified with the boss. He wasn't anything to us more than a boss. Okay, we're slaves. But we never identified. Our identity wasn't slaves. We were this situation. We were hayinu lifaro, means at that moment in history we were slaves. That's right. But does that describe who we were? Not at all. There was no loyalty to Paro, and that's why the Rav notes. The Medrash Rabbah says, it recounts that even in our state of servitude, when it's a wild Medrash. Now you'll see how the Rav reads a Medrash like no one else. The Rav notes, the Medrash says something wild. It says, when we were in Mitzrayim, Shabbos would come, we would read, quote unquote, the Medrash says, from the scrolls that we had that foretold that we would be free. What? Shabbos, even slaves have to have a day off, if you will, right? So we had a day off. And what did we do on that day? The Rav understands, what is the Medrash saying? We never became Avdei Paro. We never lost our hope for a better tomorrow. This would not be possible if you're Avdei Paro. If you identify yourself as Avdei Paro, your whole identity becomes Paro, becomes your servitude to Paro, and there is no luxury left to you of dreaming about a better tomorrow. That's the difference. And here there is hayinu lifaro. We're okay at this moment in history. We were servants. We were, but we didn't identify with Paro. They identified with Paro, and they challenged Paro, but they identified with Paro.
So they were at the 49th level of Tuma when they left. And they
Of us, Bnei Yisrael, yeah.
Israel. They had the slave mentality. Doesn't that kind of contradict the idea that they didn't have?
No, we became depressed by it. We were impacted. We were impacted by it, but we had the ability to
still hope.
Right, to still hope, and we had the ability to get out of it. Right. Okay. Continue on to Pasuk Tes. So now what happens? So Moshe tells him, listen, Paro, if you don't let our guys out, you're going to be punished with Arbe, right? This locust is going to come, and his Avdei Paro challenged Paro. He says, let them go. Don't you realize that this is number 7? We're going on to number 7. We've gone through 6 other plagues. What do you want to destroy? And Paro listens to them and says, okay, bring them back, right? Bring back Moshe and Aaron. And so what happens here? Take a look in Pasuk Ches, and then we'll take a look in Pasuk Tes. Vayushav Moshe v'Aaron al Paro. So they were returned. They came back, right? Vayomer alehem, l'chu idu es Hashem Elokechem. Okay, you can go. You're initially he said no, but then the Avdei Paro challenged Paro. What are you doing? You're destroying us. So I'm like, okay, bring them back. Okay, you can go. But by the way, miva miya hochin, who's going? Now, Pasuk Tes, Vayomer Moshe. So Moshe answers, Binu urenu uvizkenenu nelech, bivanenu uvimnosenu, bitzonenu uvikarenu nelech, ki chag Hashem lanu. You know who's going? We're all of us, all our children. That's Pasuk Tes. I'm sorry. Now I want to go to Pasuk Yud. Pasuk Yud, Vayomer alehem. So he's listening to this, and how does Paro respond? That's what you want to do? You want to go with your children? Re'u, open your eyes, Moshe. This is Paro speaking. Ki ra'ah neged pnechem. Ra'ah, evil is going to confront you. What is ra'ah? What evil is Paro warning Moshe and Aaron about? So Rashi says, Ra'ah, Paro's astrologers saw a star named Ra'ah, if you will. Evil begins to rise. Ra'ah begins to rise. What was the astrologers predicting? They were predicting bloodshed waited for the Jews. There was going to be disaster waiting for the Jews. That's what the astrologers came up with. Paro therefore warns Moshe that his plan to take the Jews into the desert to serve God will result in catastrophe. That's what he was telling them. I know from my astrologers, you're going, it's not a good idea. Moshe, open your eyes. I'm telling you, I can tell you, I have this secret information. This is the intelligence from the best source of intelligence, my astrologers, and it's going to be catastrophic if you go. I see only blood happening to you. You're going to be destroyed. But the Rav takes it. That's Rashi. Fine. The Rav develops this further. He understood there was a conversation going on between Paro and Moshe. Moshe had a great idea. What was it? He wanted to create a singular, unique society called the Jewish community. Well, what kind of society was this going to be? It was going to be different spiritually than any other society in the world. Paro was warning Moshe, this is a terrible plan. You want to create a society that's going to be different than everyone else? Well, we know. What do we say in the Megillat Esther? It's an Am that is mufuzar umefurad bein ha'amim. It's going to be, nobody's going to like them. Nobody's going to have anything to do with us, right? They're going to protest in the streets. They're going to protest in front of Sloan Kettering, as if that were, I just take a look today at Wall Street Journal's editorial. That was yesterday. This morning, take a look at, yesterday, I don't know if I wasn't aware of it until I read that there were demonstrations on Martin Luther King Day in Manhattan in front of the Sloan Kettering. They were disturbing the cancer patients and screaming Palestinian rights, etc. And the paper was denouncing it. The paper
or doing some research with an Israeli hospital. That would be alleged offense.
Yeah. That was okay. It's just so Ru'u. This is exactly what Paro is telling him. You want Ru'u? You're going to have these demonstrations. You're going to have them, Ru'u. You're going to confront it because you're going to be different. You're warning, Ru'u, open your eyes, Moshe Paro is saying. See that you will create a society that will be hated by everyone. The society will be so different that the Jew, what kind of society are you going to create? Totally different than the Gentiles. The Jew will be forbidden from entering into their houses of worship. We don't go into churches, right? And the Gentile touches the Jew's wine, the Jew won't drink the wine. This is the kind of society that you want. The separation idea promotes tremendous hatred. That's what Ra'ah, the evil. Paro was telling Moshe, realize you are creating a community of martyrdom. The tragic consequences of what you are attempting to create is foretold by the star titled Ra'ah. Ra'ah means you're creating a whole new world of catastrophe for your people. This is a terrible, terrible idea. With this understanding, it also explains Paro's reaction to Moshe's idea of Binu Reinu V'Zkenenu. You're going to take your children? Paro responded that this was a terrible idea. How can you risk the lives of children? He told him that this was unacceptable. Fine, you want to go as adults? Go as adults, but you're not to take children. The Rav said it would be like an argument, if you will. An astronaut is going to get into a spaceship, right? And he says, I'm going with my son, my little child. He's coming with me. And he's going on the space voyage. You're crazy? We respond, you want to risk your life? That's one thing. But you're going to risk the child's life as well? This very argument that Paro, according to this, how the Rav understands what Paro is doing. What did Chazal mean by he saw astrologically a star? The star means that it's going to have repercussions, right? Long into the future, it's going to have repercussions. What are the repercussions? What?
Stars don't go away.
Stars don't go away. The hatred doesn't go away, right? Esav sones Yaakov. Esav hates Yaakov. We never thought we would see this. I mean, we're the children and grandchildren of survivors. Right. We thought, this was over, but now we're seeing it. And
it didn't take long.
No, it didn't take long.
It's not friends.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, right? But this very argument is also, by the way, seen to this very day. Just this week, I don't know if you saw it, there was a report that the committed Jews, in particular Orthodox Jews, are brainwashing their children to be devoted to the state of Israel. Did you see this?
No.
Yeah, there's a whole argument as if this is I think it was in New York Times. Yes, it was in the New York Times. It was New York Times. It was committed Jews are brainwashing their children to support Israel as if this is the worst evil around, the
Right.
worst evil around. And then they show that there's a whole movement now, whole movement. You never know how many people are involved. It could be a drop in the bucket, right? A whole movement of Jews that don't want to America, that don't want to have anything to do with Israel. They have become, in particular, post October 7th, they're diaspora Jews. We have to realize that our greatness is by being in the diaspora. That's where we flourished, and get Israel out of the picture. And what the Rav is saying is that was the reality back with Paro and Moshe, and it's the reality ad hayom hazeh. That's the reality, that we're being accused of creating a society that is totally different. It is different, but it's not isolated. It's different, but it's not isolated. We participate in the world. There are more, we know this, there are more percentage Nobel Prize winners that are Jewish than any other faith in the world, any other people in the world, right? The amount that Israel gave the world. All of these demonstrators should stop using their phones, their cell phones.
Especially Waze.
Right? Waze and all of the, not only Waze, but all of the technology.
And also, we're the first ones that always show up when there's a catastrophe. Israel's always there.
Yeah, and it doesn't do any good, right? Okay, go to the next pasuk. So lo chein lechu noha gevarim v'ivdu es Hashem ki oto atem mevakshim. That's not, you want to go? Let your men go. Go. But what happens now? Vayigoresh osam me'es penei paro. The Rav focuses on these last words, and he drove them out from Paro's presence. Vayigoresh, grusha, a grusha is divorced. Get out of here. Get out of here. He threw them out. In these few words, the Rav detects how Paro responded to Moshe and Aaron, and it's a transformative moment in their relationship between Paro and Moshe and Aaron. When Moshe and Aaron first appeared, Paro did not take them seriously. Paro thought that these were two old men that you don't have to take seriously. Remember, we're told last week's parsha, how old were they? 80 and 83. They're showing up. There's a Canaan. What do we got? An old age home here. Who's showing up, right?
Maybe it's Biden.
Yeah, but they were just a little more with it, right?
Little.
Right, we know that because Moshe dies and all of his faculties and everything is working perfectly. That's where we get the bracha on Me'al Yasrim, right? Okay, on behalf of Israel, he didn't take them seriously when they showed up. He viewed these two men as silly old men. He treated them with utter contempt. Now, Vayigaresh Osam changes the equation. Contempt is no longer the response. Now he evicts them. When you evict somebody, you're taking that person seriously. When they first came, he didn't take them seriously. Why did he now, Vayigaresh Osam? Grusha, it's the same word as divorce. He divorces himself from them. It's contempt. What happened? The Rav suggests, because now he honestly was impressed with them. Arbe is, he's impressed with them. Yeah, he's worried that if they would stay any longer, they would win the battle and he would cave in.
He also was getting criticized by his own people.
Yeah, right. But he now says, if I let them continue talking, I'll be convinced with them. He now was so impressed with Moshe's charisma. He realized that he was forced to no longer ignore and reject them. The Rav says that Moshe would have had the same impact on Paro that Yaakov had on Yosef. What happened on Yosef? Yosef was seduced by Potiphar's wife. And right before he acquiesced, what happened? He saw an image, Chazal say, of his father. His father, Yaakov.
Yeah.
Yaakov dispelled that image, was able to dispel all thoughts of sin. The charisma of Yaakov impacted Yosef in such a powerful way. And so too the charisma of Moshe impacts Paro. And therefore Paro, Vayigaresh Osam, he realizes, boy, Moshe and Aaron are powerful, charismatic leaders. And if I let them stick around, I'm going to lose and they'll win. I'll cave in. And I don't want to cave in because I've become stubborn. I want to keep my stubbornness. So if you will, this moment is a transformative moment in the relationship between Moshe, Aharon, and Paro. Paro no longer just rejects and ignores them as silly old men. Paro now realizes they've earned their right, if you will. They've earned their medal because they're the charismatic Moshe and Aaron. And if they stick around any longer, I will cave in. So the Rav, as we see in this opening Aliyah into Parshas Bo, looks at words, very specific words, and he sees gems of information. The word Bo, and what does that mean? Now the word Vayigaresh, and what does that mean? All of these different words, how the Rav to saper, Laman to saper, what does that mean? It's the words are pregnant with information so powerful that once you understand these words, you see the parsha, the aliyah, in such a different fashion. Okay, next week I will not be giving a shir because it's vacation week and my kids are coming, so I'm gonna be with my children and grandchildren. But the following week I'm out of town also. And the following time, for a while, I'm not going to share. It just so happens because the following week I'm at a chasana on the East Coast, and then I'm in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, we'll get
Rabbi,
to
I have a
that.
question.
Yes,
When all these makos were happening, when did slavery exactly stop? What was going on with Bnei Yisrael while these
Well,
makos?
it only ends with you mean when do they no longer are they slaves? That's an interesting machlokas in the Rishonim and the Meforshim. They debate exactly at what point are they like no longer serving as slaves. The makos, like after Dam, do they suddenly no, it doesn't happen immediately. But somewhere there are debates exactly where during the makos they're no longer slaves. But how long does how long is this period of makos? How long does it take?
Right.
That's also a debate about what's the time span of the makos. Yes, some do say a year. Some calculated less than a year. Yeah. So somewhere along that, the makos, they suddenly, maybe it's at Arba, maybe it's now. They're no longer serving Paro any longer as servants. But that's a good question. That's a debate, Marsha. The Torah doesn't tell us clearly. It alludes to it according to some of the Mefarshim. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you got it.
It's
We'll
great.
pick up when I get back and we'll notify everyone. Okay.
So you can let the young children